I still remember the sound of Tyler's hand across my face. It echoed through our kitchen 6 years ago, louder than any storm that ever hit our Texas ranch. "You never loved me," he'd screamed. "You only loved this damn ranch." Then he walked out, never looked back, until yesterday. I stood at Frank's graveside when those church doors opened. Tyler walked in wearing a suit that cost more than our monthly feed bill, holding a manila envelope. Our eyes met. He smiled. My heart stopped. The funeral reception filled our ranch house with the scent of casseroles and quiet grief. Neighbors I'd known for 35 years shuffled through, pressing my hands, offering words that blurred together. Frank had been the backbone of this community, and now he was gone. My heart felt like a stone in my chest, heavy and cold. I was accepting condolences from Martha Henderson, who ran the feed store in town, when I felt eyes on me. Tyler stood across the living room, near the stone fireplace Frank had built with his own hands. My son looked different, polished. His dark suit was tailored perfectly, his shoes shined to a mirror finish. The scraggly beard and bloodshot eyes from 6 years ago were gone. In their place was a man who looked like he belonged in a boardroom, not a barn. He caught my gaze and nodded, almost polite. Then he worked his way through the crowd, shaking hands, accepting sympathies like he'd been here all along, like he hadn't abandoned us, like he hadn't broken his father's heart. "Mrs. Crawford," he said when he finally reached me, his voice smooth and practiced. "I'm so sorry for your loss." The formality of it stung worse than if he'd cursed me. "Tyler," I managed. My voice came out rough. "I need to speak with you, privately, when you have a moment." His tone was pleasant, almost businesslike, but his eyes were flat, empty of the warmth I remembered from when he was a boy. I nodded, too numb to argue, too exhausted to fight. An hour later, after the last neighbor had driven away and Emily had taken the grandkids upstairs for naps, Tyler found me in Frank's study. He didn't knock. Just walked in and sat down in Frank's leather chair, the one worn smooth by 30 years of my husband's weight. That simple act, sitting in Frank's chair before the leather had even cooled, told me everything I needed to know about why he'd come. He opened the manila envelope with deliberate care, pulling out a stack of legal documents. The pages rustled in the silence. "I'm claiming my half of the ranch," he said, sliding the papers across Frank's desk. "Dad built this place. I'm his son. That's my rightful inheritance." The words hit me like a physical blow. I gripped the edge of the desk to steady myself. "Tyler, your father and I built this ranch together over 35 years. We started with nothing but a mortgage and a dream. And now it's worth over $2 million. His tone was matter of fact, like we were discussing the weather. "I know Dad left everything to you in the old will, but I also know Texas law. As his biological son, I can contest this. And I will." He pulled out more papers, already filed with a lawyer's stamp. "I'm giving you the courtesy of settling this privately. You can agree to split the ranch, or we can go to court. Your choice." My hands trembled. I thought of Frank, buried just hours ago, and felt a rage so pure it cleared my head. "You haven't spoken to us in 6 years. You didn't call when your father got sick. You didn't come when he asked for you. You have no right to anything." "I have every right." Tyler's voice remained calm, which somehow made it worse. "And before you refuse, you should know something. I've been tracking the ranch finances. I know you took out a big loan 2 years ago when the drought hit. I know you're barely breaking even. Can you really afford a legal battle that could cost hundreds of thousands of dollars?" Ice water filled my veins. How did he know about the loan? That was private, between Frank and me and the bank. Tyler stood, smoothing his suit jacket. "I also know Dad tried to contact me last year. He wanted to reconcile. But you stopped him, didn't you? You always did keep us apart." "That's not true," I whispered, but he was already walking to the door. "You have 1 week to agree to my terms, or I'll see you in court. And Mother, I'll make sure everyone in this county knows what kind of woman you really are. How you drove your only son away and kept a dying man from his child." The door closed softly behind him. I sat in the silence of Frank's study, surrounded by his things, his smell still lingering in the air, and felt the foundation of my world crack beneath me. Let me tell you how we got here. Let me tell you about the day Tyler left, because that day changed everything. It was a Tuesday morning, 6 years ago. Tyler had called us from the county jail, third drunk driving arrest. This time he'd crashed his truck through the Hendersons' fence, nearly hit their youngest boy who'd been playing in the yard. By the grace of God alone, little Danny had been 50 feet away instead of 5. Frank and I drove to the sheriff's office in silence. We'd been down this road before. Twice we'd paid for rehab. Countless times we'd covered his debts, made excuses, believed his promises to change. Tyler was 32 years old, and we'd been enabling his destruction since he was 19. Sheriff Davis met us in the hallway. He was an old friend, and the look on his face told me everything. "Frank, Bertie, I'm sorry, but this time it's serious." He blew .2 on the breathalyzer in the middle of the day, and he got combative with my deputies. Frank's shoulders slumped. I watched my husband age 10 years in that moment. "He's asking for bail money," Sheriff Davis continued. $1,500. I looked at Frank. We'd had this conversation a dozen times in private. How many times could we save Tyler from himself? How many times could we watch him nearly kill someone and then hand him money to do it again? Frank's voice was steady when he spoke. "Tell him no." Sheriff Davis nodded slowly. "You sure? He needs to face consequences this time. Real consequences. We can't keep doing this." We drove home without bailing him out. Frank called a lawyer, arranged for Tyler to have representation, but we didn't pay the bail. Tyler sat in jail for 3 days before his hearing. When he got out, he came straight to the ranch. I was in the kitchen making dinner when I heard his truck roar up the drive, heard the door slam. He burst into the house like a tornado. "How could you?" His face was purple with rage. "You left me in that jail like I was nothing." Frank stood up from the table. "You drove drunk, Tyler. You could have killed a child." "It was an accident. I made a mistake." Tyler's hands were shaking. I could smell the alcohol on him already, not even a week out, and he was drinking again. "You've made this mistake 3 times, I said quietly. "When does it stop being a mistake and start being a choice?" That's when Tyler turned on me. The hatred in his eyes made me step back. "This is your fault. You've always been against me. You turned Dad into this." "Tyler, son, please." Frank moved between us. "We love you, but we can't enable you anymore. You need real help." "Help?" Tyler laughed, bitter and sharp. "You call leaving me in jail help? You care more about this ranch, about your reputation in this pathetic town, than you do about me. You always have." "That's not true," I said. My heart was breaking. "We've tried everything. We've paid for treatment. We've supported you. We've given you chance after chance. You gave up on me." Tyler's voice cracked. Then his face hardened. "You know what? Fine. You want me gone? I'm gone. But don't you ever pretend you were good parents? Don't you ever act like you tried?" Frank stepped forward. "Tyler, don't do this. Stay. Let's talk about getting you into a program." "I don't need a program. I need a family that gives a damn." Tyler looked at me then, and something shifted in his eyes. Something dark and final. "This is all your fault. You turned him against me. You poisoned him." Before I could respond, his hand came up and cracked across my cheek. The sound seemed to echo through the whole house. I staggered back, more from shock than pain, my hand flying to my face. Frank roared. In one motion, he grabbed Tyler by the arm and physically hauled him toward the door. My husband was 63 years old, but a lifetime of ranch work had kept him strong. "Get out. Get out of this house right now." Tyler yerked free. "Gladly. And I'm never coming back. You hear me? Never." He slammed out of the house. His truck sprayed gravel as he tore down the drive. Frank held me while I cried, my cheek throbbing, my heart shattered. That was 6 years ago. We heard through others that Tyler moved to Dallas, got a job, supposedly got sober, but he never called, never wrote. When Frank got sick with heart disease last year, I thought about reaching out. Frank even asked me to try, but Tyler had changed his number, blocked us on everything. He'd meant it when he said never. And now here he was, hours after we buried Frank, demanding half of everything. The next morning, I drove into town to see Harold Mitchell, the lawyer who'd handled Frank's will. Harold was 72, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and a steady presence that had guided me through more than one crisis. His office was above the hardware store on Main Street, the same place he'd practiced for 43 years. "Bertie." He stood when I came in, concern etched across his weathered face. "I heard Tyler was at the funeral. I was hoping he'd just pay respects and leave. He's contesting the will." I handed him the papers Tyler had left. "Can he do this?" Harold spent 15 minutes reading through the documents, his frown deepening. Finally, he looked up. "Frank's will is solid. Everything goes to you. Tyler abandoned the family, had no contact for 6 years. Any judge will see that." Relief flooded through me. "So he can't touch the ranch?" "I didn't say that." Harold set the papers down carefully. "Texas inheritance law is complex. If Tyler contests, it could take years to resolve. And Bertie, I have to be honest with you. Legal fees for something like this could run $200,000–300,000. Maybe more if Tyler really fights it." The relief evaporated. "I don't have that kind of money, Harold. The ranch is barely breaking even." He nodded slowly. "That's what Tyler's counting on. He wants to force you into a settlement because he knows you can't afford a prolonged court battle." I drove back to the ranch with my mind spinning. How was Tyler paying for lawyers? Where was he getting this kind of backing? Jim Warren, my foreman for the past 15 years, was waiting by the barn when I pulled up. Jim was 55, solid as an oak, with calloused hands and a face tanned leather brown from decades in the Sunday. But right now, he looked worried. "Bertie, we got a problem." He led me to the barn office, a small room filled with filing cabinets and an old computer. I was going through the system this morning, checking on some feed orders. Found something strange in the access logs. He pulled up a screen showing computer activity. Someone's been remotely accessing our files. Financial records, bank statements, everything. Starting about 6 months ago. My stomach dropped. How is that possible? They had the passwords. Only 3 people have those. He looked at me steadily. You, Frank, and me. "Jim, I know you would never give out those passwords." "No, ma'am, I wouldn't. But someone did. And whoever it was, they've been watching everything. They know about the loan, the feed bills, how much we made at last fall's cattle auction, everything." Tyler's words from yesterday echoed in my mind. I've been tracking the ranch finances. My phone rang. Frank's sister, Linda. She was 10 years younger than Frank, lived in Austin, and had always been tender-hearted. Too tender-hearted sometimes. "Bertie, I need to see you. It's important. It's about Tyler." Her voice was thick with tears. We met an hour later at the diner on Highway 12, halfway between the ranch and town. Linda's hands shook as she held her coffee cup. "I did something terrible," she whispered. "Tyler contacted me 8 months ago, out of the blue. He said he wanted to reconcile with Frank before it was too late." My heart sank. I already knew where this was going. He called me every few weeks, asked about Frank's health, about the ranch. He seemed so sincere, Bertie. So changed. He said he'd been sober for 4 years, had a good job, was going to therapy. I really thought, he'd grown up. "Linda, what did you tell him?" She started crying. "Everything. I told him about Frank's heart condition, about the loan you took during the drought, about how worried you both were. And when he asked if there was any way he could see the ranch's financial situation, to understand what he'd be coming back to, I gave him the passwords to the office computer. I closed my eyes. Tyler had been planning this for months, watching, waiting. He asked me not to tell you or Frank, said he wanted to surprise you when he was ready. I thought I was helping bring the family back together." Linda reached across the table, gripping my hand. "Bertie, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't understand what he was doing." "I know, and I did." Linda had always seen the best in people. It was one of her finest qualities and her greatest weakness. "It's not your fault, Tyler manipulated you." But driving back to the ranch, I felt the walls closing in. Tyler had been watching us, planning this, for months. He'd waited for Frank to die. This wasn't about reconciliation or family. This was calculated. Cold. I pulled into the ranch drive to find Sheriff Davis's cruiser parked by the house. My stomach clenched. Davis met me halfway to the porch. "Bertie, I'm real sorry about this. We got an anonymous call this morning. Tip about possible animal neglect on your property. What? The word came out sharp with shock. I know, but we have to follow up. Animal control's here now, checking the cattle. Humiliation burned through me. 2 county vehicles were parked by the south pasture, and I could see officials walking among my herd with clipboards. Neighbors driving past could see them. By tonight, everyone in the county would be talking. The inspection took 3 hours. They found nothing wrong because there was nothing wrong. My cattle were healthy, well-fed, their pastures clean, water troughs full. I'd been raising cattle since I was 25 years old. I knew what I was doing, but the damage was done. After they left, Sheriff Davis pulled me aside. "Bertie, the call came from a Dallas area code. Someone's trying to hurt your reputation." That evening, my phone rang again. The bank. My loan officer, a young woman named Patricia, whom I'd worked with for 2 years, sounded uncomfortable. "Mrs. Crawford, I'm calling about your business loan. We received a formal complaint today claiming you obtained the loan fraudulently, that you misrepresented the ranch's assets. That's completely false." My voice shook with anger. "I believe you, but the bank has to investigate. Until we resolve this, we're freezing your line of credit." "Patricia, I have payroll due in 3 days. I need that money to pay my ranch hands." "I'm sorry, my hands are tied. The freeze stays until the investigation concludes. Could be a week, could be longer." I hung up and sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Tyler had eaten breakfast as a boy, where Frank and I had shared 35 years of morning coffee. The walls felt like they were pressing in. I had $8,000 in my personal account. Payroll was $12,000. I needed another $4,000 just for immediate feed and supply bills. Even if I sold some cattle early, market prices were down. I'd lose money. I called my daughter Emily in Houston. She was 35, teaching elementary school, raising 2 kids with her husband Greg. "Mom, I wish I could help, but Greg just lost his job last week. We're barely making our mortgage." Emily's voice broke. "I'm so sorry." "Don't be sorry, sweetheart. You take care of your family. I'll figure this out." But I didn't know how. The next morning, I was in the barn doing the books, trying to figure out where I could scrape together the money, when Jim came running. "Bertie, you need to see this." He led me to the south pasture. 20 head of my cattle were down, staggering, vomiting. My heart stopped. These were my best breeding stock, each worth $5,000 to $7,000. Dr. Martinez, our veterinarian, arrived within 30 minutes. Elena Martinez had been treating our animals for 12 years, a no-nonsense woman with quick hands and a sharp eye. She examined the cattle with growing concern. "This looks like poisoning, something in their feed or water." She immediately started treatment, inserting IVs, administering activated charcoal. "Poisoning? How?" But even as I asked, I knew. Elena worked through the morning and into the afternoon. We moved the sick cattle into the barn, away from the others. I sat on a hay bale, covered in mud and worse, watching my livelihood die in front of me. By evening, she'd managed to stabilize most of them, but the prognosis was grim. "I've done what I can. The next 48 hours will tell." I walked back to the house as the sun set, exhausted and filthy. Through the barn door, I heard 2 of my younger ranch hands talking. They didn't know I was there. I heard Tyler Crawford's been around town, talking to folks at the diner. "Yeah? What's he saying?" "That his mama drove him away. Kept his daddy's money from him. Says he's just trying to get what's rightfully his, make things right." Always 2 sides to every story, I guess. I stood in the shadows, listening to my own employees doubt me. Tyler wasn't just attacking the ranch. He was attacking my reputation, my character, everything I'd built in this community. That night, I couldn't sleep. I went to Frank's study, sat in his chair, and let myself cry. Really cry, for the first time since he died. I cried for my husband, for my son, for the ranch we'd built with our own hands, for the life that was crumbling around me. Then I heard a vehicle pull up. 10 o'clock at night. I looked out the window to see Tyler's rental car. He knocked this time, at least. I didn't want to let him in, but I also didn't want a scene in the yard where the ranch hands might hear. Tyler walked into the study and sat down across from me. He was still in his expensive suit, though he'd loosened his tie. He looked around the room with proprietorial eyes, taking inventory. Having money problems, Mother? What do you want, Tyler? He pulled out another document from his briefcase. Always more documents. I'm prepared to make you an offer. Sign over 40% of the ranch to me now. I'll drop the will contest. 40% of $2 million is $800,000. You think I'm stupid? No. I think you're desperate. He leaned forward. And I think you know you can't win a court battle. The legal fees alone will bankrupt you. But if you settle with me now, you keep 60%. You can stay on the ranch, keep running things. I'll be a silent partner. Why are you doing this? The question came out broken. Is it really about the money, or is this about punishing me? For a moment, something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe, or anger so old it had calcified into something harder. Then his expression smoothed again. I have something else to show you. He pulled out a letter, placed it on the desk between us. It was in Frank's handwriting. My heart clenched. Tyler, the letter read, I want to make things right. When I'm gone, I want you to have your fair share. You're my son. Please come home. The paper trembled in my hands. Where did you get this? I found it in Dad's papers. Seems he was writing to me without your knowledge. Seems he wanted me to inherit, but you kept us apart. Frank never mentioned writing to you. Maybe he knew you'd stop him. Maybe he was trying to reach out behind your back because you'd turned him against me. Tyler stood. Think about my offer. You've got 48 hours. After that, I file a full lawsuit. And I'll be presenting this letter as evidence of Dad's true intentions. After he left, I sat holding the letter. Frank's handwriting was unmistakable. But something felt wrong. The paper looked too new, too crisp. And the date said 3 years ago, but I couldn't remember Frank mentioning Tyler at all back then. We'd been focused on getting through the drought, on keeping the ranch afloat. I went to our bedroom, to Frank's nightstand. Inside the drawer were his personal things, including his journal from the last year of his life. I'd been too heartbroken to read it before, but now I needed to know. I opened it with shaking hands. Page after page, Frank wrote about the ranch, about his worries for me, about his heart condition, and yes, he wrote about Tyler. I miss my son, one entry read. I pray for him every night. I hope someday he finds peace, but I know he's not ready. I know Tyler needs to want help, and right now he doesn't. Bertie was right. We had to let him go. Enabling him was killing us all. Another entry, from 8 months before Frank died. I wonder where Tyler is. If he's safe, if he's sober, I would give anything to see him changed, healed. But I can't force that. I can only pray. The ranch must stay with Bertie. She built it as much as I did. More, maybe. She's the strong one. There was no mention of wanting to give Tyler part of the ranch. No secret letter writing. Just a father's grief and love and acceptance of hard truths. I held the letter Tyler had shown me up to the lamplight. Something about the paper quality, the way the ink sat on the surface. It looked wrong. My phone rang at 6 a.m. Jim. Bertie. Get down to the south pasture. Now. I threw on clothes and drove the quarter-mile to where Jim was standing with Dr. Martinez. On the ground were 12 of the 20 cattle that had been poisoned. Dead. I'm sorry, Bertie, Elena said quietly. The poison was too strong. I couldn't save them. 12 head of breeding stock. Over $70,000 gone. The insurance would investigate, probably deny the claim since it was deliberate poisoning. I was ruined. I stood there as the sun came up over my ranch, over the land Frank and I had worked for 3.5 decades, and felt something inside me crack. That afternoon, Sheriff Davis came by with news. We tracked down the feed store where someone bought livestock poison. 2 counties over. They paid cash, but the security camera caught the transaction. We're pulling the footage now. It was Tyler, I said flatly. Can't say for sure yet, but the timeline matches. Day before your cattle got sick, someone matching a general description was at that store. My phone rang. Emily. Mom. Tyler sent me a package, full of documents, copies of things. He says Dad wanted him to have the ranch. He has a letter. She paused. Mom, is it true? Did Dad really write to him? Emily, your father never wrote that letter. I found his journal. Tyler's lying, but I could hear the doubt in my daughter's voice. The letter looks real, Mom. It's in Dad's handwriting. People can forge signatures, Emily. They can trace handwriting. A long silence. I want to believe you, Mom. But Tyler seems so sincere, and he has evidence. After we hung up, I sat in the empty house and realized Tyler had done it. He'd turned even my own daughter against me. The isolation was complete. 3 days later, a certified letter arrived. A law firm in Dallas, one of those big corporate offices with marble lobbies and $100 an hour parking. They were representing Tyler in his claim against the estate. The letter demanded full accounting of all ranch assets, financial records for the past 10 years, documentation of every decision I'd made. It was designed to intimidate, to bury me in paperwork and legal requirements. I called Harold. He sounded grim. Bertie, this firm doesn't come cheap. We're talking $500 an hour, minimum. Where is Tyler getting this kind of money? I don't know. He said he has a job, but this is beyond a regular salary. Let me do some digging. 2 days later, Harold called me back. Bertie, I found something. Tyler works for a company called Apex Land Development. They're based in Dallas, specialize in buying rural property for commercial development. My blood went cold. Commercial development? I did more research. There have been news articles. Apex has been buying up land in your county for the past 3 years. They're planning a massive resort and golf course development. $1-million homes, spa facilities, the works. Where? But I already knew. Right in the middle of their planned development site is a 500-acre cattle ranch. Your ranch, Bertie. You're sitting on the key parcel they need. Without your land, their whole project falls apart. The pieces clicked into place. Tyler didn't want to run the ranch. He wanted to force me out, take ownership, then sell to his employers. The land would be worth 3 or 4 times its current value to developers. He stood to make millions. How long has he worked there? I asked. 4 years. Right around when he supposedly got sober and turned his life around. This had been his plan all along. Every move calculated. He'd used Linda to spy on us, waited for Frank to die, then swooped in. This wasn't about inheritance or family. It was business. That evening, Jim asked to speak with me privately. He couldn't look me in the eye. Bertie, I need to tell you something. I did something I'm not proud of. He explained how 6 months ago, a man approached him in town. Said he was a private investigator working for Tyler, trying to help with a family reconciliation. Offered Jim $5,000 for copies of the ranch financial records. I was going through a divorce. My lawyer fees were killing me. I thought it was harmless. Tyler was family. I thought he just wanted to understand the business. Jim's voice broke. I never imagined he'd use it like this. I'm so sorry, Bertie. Another betrayal. But looking at Jim's face, seeing his genuine remorse, I realized he'd been manipulated too. Will you testify to this? Tell a judge what happened. Yes, ma'am. Whatever you need. I'll make this right. The next morning, I met with Harold again. I asked about the letter Tyler had shown me, the one supposedly from Frank. Harold looked uncomfortable. Tyler mentioned something about an updated will when he filed his claim. Let me check my files. He pulled out a folder, handed me a document. 2 months before Frank died, he called me. Said he wanted to make a change to his will. My heart stopped. He wanted to add a clause. If Tyler came back and proved he'd been sober for 5 years, and if Tyler apologized to you for what he'd done, Frank wanted to leave him $50,000. Not the ranch, just cash. A gesture of forgiveness, a fresh start. Why didn't you tell me? Because Frank never signed it. We were going to finalize it the week after he had his heart attack. He died before we could complete the paperwork, so legally, it doesn't exist. The original will stands. But if Tyler found out about this draft somehow, he could twist it, could claim Frank intended to provide for him, that I was going against Frank's wishes. That Sunday, I forced myself to go to church. Frank would have wanted me there. The small white chapel on the edge of town had been our spiritual home for 3 decades. But I noticed the whispers, the sideways glances. After the service, people who usually rushed to talk to me hung back. Only a few approached, their smiles forced, uncomfortable. Mrs. Patterson, who'd been my friend for 20 years, finally came over. She looked pained. Bertie, I heard Tyler at the diner yesterday. He was talking about how you cut him off without a cent. How Frank wanted him to have part of the ranch, but you wouldn't allow it. She touched my arm gently. People are saying maybe you were too hard on him. He seems so polished now, so successful, so different from the troubled boy we knew. I drove home fighting tears. Tyler's smear campaign was working. Even my friends were starting to doubt me. That afternoon, I found the word greedy spray painted in red across my mailbox. Someone had thrown rocks through my truck window. Glass covered the front seat. The community I'd been part of for 35 years was turning against me. Monday morning, Jim came running to the house. "Bertie, something's wrong with the water system." We drove out to the main well that supplied water to the livestock troughs. Someone had dumped something in it. The water was cloudy, smelled chemical. We had to shut it down immediately, truck in water from town until we could get it tested and cleaned. More money. More setbacks. More evidence that Tyler wasn't going to stop until he'd destroyed everything. That night, my chest started hurting, sharp pains that radiated down my left arm. I tried to ignore it, but by midnight I couldn't breathe right. Jim found me collapsed in the barn the next morning. The hospital lights were too bright. Tubes ran from my arms. Machines beeped steadily, monitoring my heart. Dr. Patel, the cardiologist, stood by my bed with a concerned expression. "You had a mild cardiac event, Mrs. Crawford. Not a full heart attack, but serious enough. Your heart can't take this level of stress. You need to make changes, reduce your stress significantly, or the next one will be worse." I spent 3 days in the hospital. Emily drove up from Houston, sat by my bed holding my hand, but I could see the worry in her eyes wasn't just about my health. When they released me, Jim drove me home. I felt weak, unsteady. The doctor's words echoed in my mind. "Your heart can't take this." Taped to my front door was a legal notice. Court date set for 6 weeks from now. Another notice underneath it. The bank had scheduled a cattle auction to recover their debt. They were going to sell off my herd piece by piece until the loan was satisfied. My ranch was being dismantled while I'd been in the hospital. I was sitting at the kitchen table staring at the notices when I heard a car pull up, Tyler. He walked in carrying flowers, bright yellow roses, the kind Frank used to bring me on our anniversary. The symbolism was cruel. "I heard about your heart attack. I'm sorry." He sat down across from me, placed the flowers on the table between us. His expression was concerned, almost gentle. It was the worst kind of mockery. "This doesn't have to go on," he said softly. "You're making yourself sick fighting something you can't win. Just sign the ranch over to me. I'll let you stay in the house for the rest of your life." "I'm not heartless, Mother. I don't want you to die." "Why are you doing this, Tyler?" My voice came out hoarse. "Is it really about the ranch? Or is it about punishing me?" His mask slipped, just for a moment. I saw the anger underneath, the hurt that had festered for 6 years. "You want to know why? Because you gave up on me. When I needed you most, when I was drowning, you turned your back. You let me sit in that jail cell and you didn't care. We tried to help you for 15 years before that. Rehab, therapy, paying your debts. When does helping become enabling? Dad would have helped me that last time. But you convinced him not to. You took my father from me." His hands clenched into fists on the table. "You cared more about your reputation in this small town than you cared about your son." "That's not true. We loved you. We still love you. You have a strange way of showing love." He stood up, back in control. "You have 1 week. Sign the papers, or lose everything in court. Your choice." After he left, I sat alone in the kitchen where I'd raised Tyler, where we'd had Christmas mornings and birthday parties, where Frank had taught our son to tie his shoes at that very table. I looked at the photos on the wall. Tyler at 5, gap-toothed and grinning, sitting on Frank's shoulders. Tyler at 10, showing off his first buckle from the junior rodeo. Tyler at 16, before the drinking started, before everything went wrong. Where had it all gone wrong? What could I have done differently? My phone rang. Emily. She was crying. "Mom," Tyler called me. He told me things about Dad, about the will. He showed me documents. She hesitated. "Mom, did Dad really want Tyler to have the ranch? Did you hide that from everyone?" The words cut deeper than any physical pain. "Emily, your father and I built this ranch together. Every fence post, every barn beam. Tyler's lying. He has a letter, Mom, in Dad's handwriting. Official-looking documents. I don't know what to believe anymore. We hung up with an ocean of doubt between us. Even my own daughter questioned me now. I went to bed that night feeling more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. Frank was gone. Tyler had become a stranger bent on my destruction. Emily doubted me. The community whispered behind my back. My body was failing me. I'd never felt so defeated. But sometime in the dark hours before dawn, I got out of bed, went to Frank's study, opened his journal again, found the photograph tucked between the pages that I'd missed before. Frank and Tyler, maybe 20 years ago, building a fence together on the south pasture, both of them smiling, working side by side. On the back, in Frank's careful handwriting, "My son. I'll never stop loving him. But love means letting someone face their consequences. Love means truth, even when it hurts." I held that photo in the darkness and understood something. Giving Tyler the ranch wouldn't heal him. It wouldn't make him happy. It would only enable the same destructive patterns that had nearly killed him 6 years ago. I'd been fighting this battle defensively, trying to protect what was mine, but Frank's words reminded me of a deeper truth. Sometimes love means standing firm. Sometimes love means saying no, even when it costs you everything. I'd been trying to survive Tyler's attacks. It was time to fight back. At dawn, I started making phone calls. "First, Jim, I'm keeping you on. I need your help." He agreed immediately, relief flooding his voice. I had him write down everything about the private investigator who'd bribed him, every detail he could remember, description, name, the company he claimed to work for. It was a start. Second, Linda. Frank's sister answered on the first ring. "Bertie, I'm so sorry. I've been sick over what I did." "I know, and I need you to make it right. Will you testify about exactly what Tyler said to you? How he manipulated you for information?" "Yes, anything. I'll tell them everything." Third, Sheriff Davis. "I want to press charges about the poisoned cattle." "I was hoping you'd say that. We pulled the security footage from that feed store. Can't see the face clearly, but the height and build matched Tyler. And we got cell tower records. His phone pinged off towers in that area the day of the purchase." "Is it enough?" "It's something. Combined with motive and opportunity, it might be enough for the district attorney." Fourth, Harold. "I'm not settling. I'm fighting this, whatever it takes." Harold was quiet for a moment. "I was hoping you'd say that, because Bertie, I found something." He'd done his own investigation into Tyler's finances. The successful businessman image was a lie. Tyler was deeply in debt. Gambling, mostly. Online poker, sports betting. He'd relapsed into addiction, just a different kind. His job at Apex Development is low level. He's a junior land scout, makes maybe $50,000 a year. He's not an executive. He's barely above entry level. Then how is he paying for those lawyers? That's the interesting part. Apex is bankrolling everything. His lawsuit, his lawyers, his expenses. They've invested over $200,000 in Tyler's claim. I found the paper trail. Why would they do that? Because your ranch is the key to their development. They've already bought the surrounding properties. You're the holdout in the middle. If Tyler wins even partial ownership, he's agreed to sell his share to Apex immediately. They get the land, you get forced out, and Tyler gets a finder's fee. Everyone wins except you. But Harold wasn't done. I filed for discovery in the lawsuit. Tyler has to provide his financial records now. And Bertie, there's more. Large payments from Apex to Tyler labeled consulting fees, going back over a year, before Frank died. He was being paid to scout the property while Dad was still alive. And I found something else. Security footage from your neighbor's cameras. Their property overlooks your access road. Tyler's car was on your property twice last year. He was casing the place, looking for vulnerabilities. The betrayal went deeper than I'd imagined. Tyler had been planning this for over a year, maybe longer, every move calculated. "There's one more thing," Harold said carefully. "That letter Tyler showed you, supposedly from Frank. I had a forensic document examiner look at it. And? The paper is wrong for the date. The ink chemistry is off. And the signature, while it looks like Frank's, shows signs of tracing. It's a forgery." I sat back in my chair. He forged a letter from his dead father. Yes. and that's a crime. Fraud, forgery, possibly attempted theft. If we can prove it in court, Tyler's not just losing his lawsuit, he's going to jail. Over the next 3 weeks, we built our case. Dr. Martinez kept detailed samples from the poisoned cattle. Testing confirmed commercial livestock poison, not accidental contamination. Sheriff Davis tracked Tyler's movements, built a timeline. The feed store purchase, the cell tower pings, the timing all matched. The forensic document examiner prepared his report on the forged letter. Harold subpoenaed Tyler's financial records from Apex, found the money trail. Linda agreed to testify about Tyler's manipulation. Jim wrote a full statement about the bribery. But Tyler wasn't giving up. As he realized I wasn't caving, he escalated. He showed up at the ranch with a real estate appraiser. Walked the property with them, pointing things out, discussing values. It was psychological warfare, showing me he was already planning what to do with the land. He sent Emily another package. More fake documents, more twisted versions of the truth. But this time, I was ready. I called Emily first, spent 2 hours on the phone explaining everything. Showed her Harold's findings, the forensic report, the evidence of forgery. He forged a letter from Dad? Emily's voice was filled with horror. Yes, baby. And he's been planning this for over a year. This isn't about family or inheritance. It's about money. About selling our land to developers. Emily was quiet for a long moment. Then, Mom, I'm so sorry. I should have trusted you. I should have known Tyler was lying. He's very good at lying. He always has been. What can I do to help? Just be there. At the court hearing. I need you there. The court date arrived on a cold morning in late March. The county courthouse was a 2-story brick building on the town square, built in 1923, with high ceilings and creaky wooden floors. The courtroom was packed. Neighbors, friends, people I'd known for decades. Some were there to support me. Others were just curious, drawn by the gossip and drama. Tyler arrived with his lawyers. 3 of them, all in expensive suits, carrying expensive briefcases. They looked like they'd stepped out of a big city law firm, which they had. Next to them, Harold looked like what he was, a small-town lawyer who'd spent his career handling wills and property disputes. But Harold's eyes were sharp, and he'd prepared well. Judge Margaret Warren entered, and we all stood. She was 68, had been a judge in this county for 22 years. Fair but firm, she didn't tolerate nonsense in her courtroom. Tyler's lead lawyer, a man named Richard Crenshaw, presented their case first. He painted Tyler as the wronged son. Driven away by a harsh mother, kept from his father, denied his rightful inheritance. He presented the forged letter, not knowing we'd had it analyzed. Talked about Frank's supposed wishes to provide for Tyler. Made it sound like I'd manipulated a dying man. Tyler testified. He was polished, sympathetic. Talked about his struggles with addiction, how he'd turned his life around, how he just wanted what his father had intended. I made mistakes, he said, looking directly at the judge. I was young and lost, but I've changed. I'm 5 years sober. I have a career, a life. I'm not asking for charity. I'm asking for what's fair. My father built that ranch. I'm his son. I deserve my share. It was a good performance. I saw people in the gallery nodding. Even the judge looked thoughtful. Then Harold stood up to cross-examine. Mr. Crawford, you say you're 5 years sober. Can you provide documentation of that? AA meeting attendance? A sponsor's contact information? Tyler hesitated. I don't go to meetings anymore. I've moved past that. I see. And your job at Apex Land Development. Can you describe your position? I'm a land acquisition specialist. That sounds important. What does it pay? Tyler's lawyer objected, but the judge allowed it. Tyler had made his financial situation part of his claim. About $50,000 a year. $50,000. Yet you've hired a law firm that charges $500 an hour. How are you paying for that? I saved money. And Apex is helping me. Helping you how? The questions kept coming, each one tightening the noose. Harold introduced Tyler's financial records, showing the payments from Apex. Showed he was deep in gambling debt. Showed he'd been paid to target the ranch. Then Harold called his witnesses. Linda testified first. She was crying, but her testimony was clear. Tyler had manipulated her for information, used her affection to spy on us. She described how he'd been cold and calculating, despite his claims of wanting reconciliation. Jim testified about being bribed, named the private investigator, who turned out to be employed by Apex. Sheriff Davis testified about the cattle poisoning, presented the evidence, the security footage, the cell tower records, the timeline. Dr. Martinez testified about the poison used, the livestock deaths, the deliberate nature of the act. Then came the forensic document examiner. He explained his analysis of the letter Tyler had presented. Wrong paper, wrong ink, traced signature. In my professional opinion, this document was created within the past 6 months. It's not 3 years old, and the signature, while superficially similar, shows classic signs of forgery. Tyler's face went pale. His lawyers leaned together, whispering urgently. Harold presented Frank's actual journal entries. The judge read them carefully. Frank's real wishes, in his own hand, stating clearly that the ranch should stay with me. Finally, Harold called me to testify. I told the truth. About Tyler's addiction, our attempts to help him, the drunk driving arrests, the near miss with the Henderson boy, our decision to stop enabling him, the slap, his departure. "Did you love your son?" Harold asked. "With all my heart. I still do." "Then why didn't you bail him out that last time?" "Because love isn't about protecting someone from consequences. It's about wanting what's best for them, even when it's hard, even when they hate you for it." I looked at Tyler directly. I would have given him anything if it would have helped him, but enabling his addiction wasn't love. It was slowly killing us all. Sometimes loving someone means letting them fall, praying they'll hit bottom and finally reach for help. Tyler stared at me with such hatred it felt like a physical force. When we finished, Judge Warren called for a short recess. 20 minutes felt like hours. When she returned, her expression was grave. "I've reviewed all the evidence presented. This is one of the most troubling cases I've seen in my years on the bench." She looked at Tyler. "Mr. Crawford, you've presented a case based largely on a forged document. The forensic evidence is clear. That letter from your father was fabricated." Tyler's lawyers tried to object, but the judge raised her hand. "Furthermore, the evidence suggests you've engaged in a pattern of harassment, fraud, and possibly criminal conduct against your mother. The cattle poisoning, the false reports, the manipulation of family members. This isn't about inheritance. This is about revenge and financial gain." She shuffled her papers. "Your claim to the estate is dismissed in its entirety. The original will stands. Everything goes to Mrs. Crawford as your father intended." Tyler started to stand, his face flushed with rage. "This isn't over. She doesn't deserve that ranch. I'm his son." The bailiff moved toward him. Judge Warren's voice was ice. "Mr. Crawford, I'm holding you in contempt. Furthermore, I'm referring this matter to the district attorney for investigation of fraud, forgery, and animal cruelty. Bailiff, please take Mr. Crawford into custody." Everything happened fast then. Tyler lunged toward me, but the bailiff caught him. He was screaming as they dragged him out. "You'll pay for this! You took everything from me! I'll destroy you!" His lawyers gathered their papers and left quickly, wanting no part of what came next. Outside the courthouse, Tyler was arrested. The charges were read: fraud, forgery, conspiracy, animal cruelty. His employers at Apex issued a statement within hours, distancing themselves, claiming Tyler had acted without authorization. They threw him under the bus as soon as he became a liability. The weeks that followed were quiet, peaceful in a way I hadn't felt in months. The bank dropped their fraud investigation once the truth came out. My line of credit was restored. Emily and her family came to visit, helped with the spring branding. The community, many of them, came by to apologize. "We should have known better," Martha Henderson said, bringing over a casserole. "Tyler always was a good liar, even as a boy. We should have trusted you." The cattle that survived the poisoning recovered. I had to rebuild part of my herd, but the ranch survived. We survived. 6 months after the trial, I stood at Frank's grave on a warm September morning. The grass had grown over the fresh dirt. I placed flowers by the headstone, simple wildflowers from our pasture. "I did it, Frank," I said softly, talking to him like he was there. Maybe he was. "I saved our ranch. our legacy. I thought about Tyler, sitting in county jail awaiting trial. I got a letter from him last week, from jail. He wants me to visit. The letter had been short. No apology, no acknowledgement of what he'd done. Just a request for money for a better lawyer. One last attempt to use me. I wrote back. I said no. I'd thought about it for days, agonized over it. But in the end, I realized the truth. Sending money, visiting him, trying to save him again would just continue the cycle. Tyler had to save himself. That was the only way he'd ever really change. He made his choices, Frank. And I made mine. I touched the cool marble of the headstone. I chose to protect what you and I built together. I chose to stand up for the truth. And in the end, the truth was enough. The morning sun was warm on my face. Birds sang in the oak trees. In the distance, I could see the ranch, my cattle grazing in the green pastures, the barn Frank built with his own hands standing solid and strong. I learned something through all this, I said to Frank's grave, to the wind, to myself. Real strength isn't about being harsh or being soft. It's about knowing the difference. It's about loving someone enough to let them face their consequences. It's about fighting for what's right, even when the whole world seems against you. I thought about all the times I doubted myself, questioned my choices. The nights I'd wondered if we'd been too hard on Tyler, if we should have helped him one more time. Sometimes the hardest thing we do is refuse to save someone who's drowning us both. And sometimes, that's the most loving thing of all. I walked back to my truck. Emily and her kids were waiting at the ranch. We were going to ride out to the south pasture, check the new calves. Life was going on. The ranch was going on. As I drove back home, I thought about everything I'd been through. The grief of losing Frank, the betrayal by my son, the fight to save my home, the moments when I'd wanted to give up. But I hadn't given up. And that made all the difference. Tyler would face his consequences now. Maybe, someday, he'd truly change. Maybe he'd understand that we'd loved him enough to tell him the truth, even when the truth was hard. Maybe not. That was his journey now, not mine. Mine was here. On this land, with my daughter and grandchildren, building a future on the foundation Frank and I had laid together. The ranch stretched out before me, 500 acres of Texas soil, bought with sweat and sacrifice and love. It wasn't perfect. There would be more droughts, more struggles, more hard years. But it was mine, ours, a legacy of hard work and integrity. And that was worth fighting for. I pulled into the ranch yard. Emily waved from the porch, my granddaughter on her hip. Jim was leading horses from the barn, ready for our ride. The afternoon sun painted everything gold. Home. Safe. Whole. Sometimes love means holding on. Sometimes it means letting go. And sometimes it means standing firm, no matter the cost, because some things are worth protecting. I'd learned that lesson the hardest way possible, but I'd learned it. And I'd survived. Now, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to make a tough choice between enabling someone you love or letting them face their own consequences? It's never easy, is it? Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is say no, even when it breaks our hearts. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you faced a similar situation? How did you handle it? If this story touched you, please hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories and reminds us all that we're not alone in our struggles. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel. Every week I share stories about real life, real struggles, and real triumph. Stories about ordinary people facing extraordinary challenges. Share this video with someone who might need to hear it. Maybe someone who's dealing with a difficult family situation, or someone who's questioning whether they made the right choice in setting boundaries with a loved one. Sometimes we all need to know that standing firm, protecting what we've built, and choosing truth over easy peace is okay. More than okay. Sometimes it's necessary. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. I hope it gave you something to think about, maybe even some comfort if you're facing your own battles. Remember, you're stronger than you think. The truth is powerful. And sometimes, the most loving thing we can do is let someone we love face their own consequences so they can finally learn, grow, and change. Take care of yourselves. Protect what matters. and never apologize for standing up for the truth. Until next time,